Hi, this is Christopher with another episode of What's Brewing. I've got with me Mr. Josh Carlson, who's going to be sitting down to talk about some of his personal, professional, and political life. Let's roll that beautiful B-roll. So Josh, let's start with personal. Tell us a little bit about your personal life.
Okay, well, I've been married for about 15 years. I have two kids, a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. And out of everything that we're going to talk about, they're the priority. They come first and everything I do. Love my family. I really have a great wife and great kids.
That's great. You know, I think family's super important. For me, you know, a lot of times, and maybe you agree with this, social media, I don't know if you do this, and you don't have to admit that you do. I'll admit, for those who know me, I'm pretty honest. I keep it real. We sort of curate our social media life to be like the very best version of ourselves, right? Well, I don't put like really ugly pictures of me shaving, you know, in my bathroom. It's normally pretty pictures. Like my new thing, and I hope people don't judge me for this, but I always post like my view on my walk. And I legit walk every day, but I always go in and edit it. So like my view after post-production editing in a professional editing tool on my walk, you know. So tell me a little bit like about your family life, because I know oftentimes I present, you know, a version of myself. I don't want to say that it's not real, because it is real, right? But what are some of the things that, you know, you found that are your greatest joys about being married and being a parent?
Well, I'm glad it's not just me, because when I go for a walk, my walks don't look like your walks.
I make sure my walks are cinematic.
That's
you know,
right.
Why are my walks in 120 frames per second looking so good? You know,
That's right.
How did you get the colors of the trees to like match up with your camera?
Yeah, mine aren't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but to answer your question, it's, you know, it's the your family, my kids, my wife see me at not just the best moments, but at my worst moments.
Yeah.
They get to see me when I'm exhausted at the end of the day, or when I'm tired and I don't necessarily feel like doing what I have to do. And so I think it's that authenticity that you don't get to curate that time with them that we do whenever I'm speaking or I'm doing something professionally, or you know, we all do that.
Yep.
And so it's that, who are you without the filter, without the editing?
Yeah.
And so it makes me check myself, because I want who I am all the time to be someone that I'm proud of, that sets an example for my kids, someone that shows love and appreciation towards my wife. And so that's important. So I look forward to those moments together. Yeah. I look forward to the time that we get to spend together, creating memories, and that's really important to me.
Yeah, you know, I don't have children. I have a dog who evidently...
I thought he was my dog now.
Right. I feel like this is like transference of like he started off at the door like growling and barking and all these things, which if a car goes by, he'll do again. But now he's sitting by Josh. Like we've got pictures. We'll post those. We'll post the pictures of him looking very regal. Admiral Chu here. Well, I think that's it. Like my wife sees me who I really am, and I don't have children. But I think that's probably one of the toughest thing about being a parent is your children see who you really are, not the version that you want to project, but what you really are. They know when you're being honest. They know when you're faking it. They know when you're, you know, in our moments of maybe pride or maybe frustration, right? They see all of that. How do you handle that as a parent?
You know, at first, because my son will tell you, he'll tell me this, Daddy, you just need to calm down a little bit.
The honesty of children.
And my first response is kind of like, hey, you don't need to tell me. But if I take a step back and don't respond immediately, most of the time, if I'm honest with myself, he's right. And I do need to just take a deep breath and think about how I'm going to respond. And so I think it's all in how we respond. I can either get offended by that and say, I'm your dad, you shouldn't say anything, don't. But at the end of the day, kids make people better. He makes me better, and you know, responsibility makes people better, and kids are the ultimate responsibility.
That's it. Yeah, I think children are such a gift. You know, I've worked in student ministry like you for many years. I think children, we say things like children are our future, but there are, and I understand what that means. They are our future citizens, they're our future contributors, they're our future educators, they're our future firemen, police officers, business people. They are our future, but it's so good when they are in your present and when you're present with them.
Absolutely.
You can learn so much because of the level of innocence that they have, their level of honesty, and the fact that because you're a father, they can be real with you, and they could probably say things to you that other people probably wouldn't say.
It's true, and that's one of my goals, is that no matter what I do or how busy I am, I always want to be present with them. That at the end of the day, my professional career will come to an end, my political career will come to an end, but I will always be a father, and I'll always be a husband. And at some point my kids will move out and that role changes, and that's why, even more so than my kids, my relationship with my wife is so important, because that's the one constant, or the most constant thing in my life.
Yeah, I was thinking about it the other day. I'm watching a lot of Choo-Choo. Come on, buddy. My dog hijacks every single video. Like, I'm just going to rename this the Choo-Choo channel on YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube lately, and I watch a lot of these couples, and I hate to say that I've learned a lot, but I've learned a lot. Some of the vlogs out there, just the way that you see them interact, and you could tell they're being real. They're not these fake Insta couples, where like Instagram couples where they get dressed up, and they're just being real people. And I don't know if I should feel shame or inspiration. I don't know. It's a mix of feelings. I haven't decided how I feel, but I've learned more about watching other people who are just vulnerable and genuine.
And I think people want that, right? We were talking about a produced world that we live in.
Yeah.
I think people crave and desire authenticity.
Yeah.
And with that comes things that aren't always perfect.
Right. It's not always glossy.
It's not. And I think people understand that and crave that because we live in a world that's so produced.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that over the last few years, I'm getting older. More and more I'm realizing my age. My wife and I are talking on pretty frequently now about things that you say that your parents said, mm-hmm. right? Full credit to my mom, right? So nothing bad about what your parents say, but you start saying things and you're like, are we that old now? Like, you feel like you've got to go, like, do I need to go see the doctor about this? Did I catch old? And so I start saying things where you start to reflect more. There's a certain point where you look at how do you want to live your life? What are you letting influence you? How are you making your decisions? Who your friends are, right? What your values really, really are, not just what the brands that you bought into, right? So I think that starts to happen to all of us, where the marketing and the impression and all, like I said, the produced world, those will always be influences, so I don't want to say that they're not. But I think they take second fiddle to the reality of what really matters in your home life.
Well, it's refreshing, right? Whenever you see something authentic, even if it isn't always picture perfect.
Yeah.
And, that's why I mentioned my wife. I have an amazing wife she makes me a better man. And that doesn't mean that there's never conflict.
Right, yeah.
But it takes conflict. A sharpening of a knife is two pieces of metal scraping against each other, but in the process,
yeah,
you're sharpening. Well, my wife does that to me, and I hope that I do that to her. We make each other better. And like I said, that isn't always perfect, but it makes us better. And I think people are looking for that authenticity.
Absolutely, and I like that idea that iron sharpens iron. I think that's something that most folks now, we always think of conflict as something negative, and it can be harmful and destructive, but it's also something that can be meant to make you stronger and better, and it should, right? A friend of mine once said that false confidence withers in adversity, but true faith perseveres in the toughest of times. And I think that's true of any relationship, especially in the home. Which leads, I think, to the next thing, right? Our home life really is where it all starts. But of course, you and I are professionals. We do work for a living. So tell us a little bit about your day job.
So I work in IT. I have been in IT since the summer after my junior year of high school. Started working for a summer internship at the Lafayette Parish School Board.
Wow.
And so I've been working in IT ever since, almost 18 years now. And so I currently serve as the Director of Technology at Ascension Episcopal School.
It's a good school. I heard you guys were an Apple Distinguished School.
We are. We've actually been named an Apple Distinguished School 4 times now, 4 consecutive times, which we're one of about 50 schools in the nation that have received that designation 4 consecutive times.
It's high honor.
It really is. It's a high benchmark to reach. Apple, as you know, does not put their stamp of approval on things easily.
Yeah.
And so to receive that honor, not just once but 4 times, has been really a great honor, and speaks not to what I've done, but we have a great team and of course great teachers, because at the end of the day, they're looking at not just technology, but is technology influencing and elevating what's being done in the classroom?
Yeah, I think that's, for those who don't know, I have a degree in education. I also work in IT. I think one of the challenging things that we have in our generation is that we often see technology as just sort of innately improving lives. And from an education standpoint, both my parents are educators, Dr. Holmes. My wife's an educator. I've taught in the classroom. I work with schools on a weekly, if not daily basis. So education is a big part of my life. One of the things that most folks don't often appreciate is pedagogy. Now, those who don't know, big word, right? That's one of those multiple syllable words. Literally means teaching method. For those educators, they're like, I know what that means.
The first time someone used pedagogy, so my primary background is technology, not education, and I was like Googling it really quick. So
I'd be like, don't you judge me, be like, what? No, it's teaching method, right? And I think, technology can enhance the learning experience.
That's the perfect word. I tell our team all the time that technology can never become the focus in the classroom.
Right.
Because once it becomes the focus, either in a good way or a bad way, then we've failed. It should blend into the background and elevate what's being done, that you can never replace a great teacher with great content.
Right.
Or a great teacher and great content with technology. It is not a substitution, it's an enhancement.
And that's it. I think about it. No, I love Apple, and every year they're going to release new things. I think it would be so interesting in the construction business if someone made like a new hammer. It'd be like, this is the best hammer we've ever made. We took everything we learned in previous iterations. It's better wood, it's better metal, right? Like we don't do this with hammer, but in many cases, the iPad or a Mac, or if you're, Chrome or Windows, whatever your platform is, those things are just tools, right? We don't, and not to take away from them, because I love what Apple's doing with them, and you can now, do so much more than what you could. But at the end of the day, we invest in technology to enhance the learning experience. It doesn't make the learning experience.
Well, so a perfect example, when I was selling our board on moving to an iPad 1-to-1 program, which is a significant investment of resources. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
I went to a board meeting, and this is a little bold, but it proved my point. I handed our current science textbook to one board member, and I handed an iPad to the second board member. And I said, can you tell me what was the latest element discovered in the periodic table? So one starts flipping through the textbook. It took him 7-8 minutes to find the right page, sift through the information, and find the answer. The person on the iPad found that answer in less than 30 seconds.
Right.
What sold it was that the answers that they got were wrong, because our textbook was 7 years old and there had been 2 elements discovered since then.
Wow.
And after that, they had 0 questions. Again, we're not changing the content. We're not changing, it doesn't replace, as you said, pedagogy and what do you do with that information, but the access to information and how we process information. No longer can the teacher be the sage on the stage.
Right.
The person with all the information, because information's changing so quickly.
It does.
It's giving you access to information, and we have to teach kids how to process and interpret that information. What do you do with the information?
That's right. Learning wisdom, learning discernment, learning how to use critical thinking, and I think in our generation now, in our time now, it's so important to understand those skills, because the information is literally at your fingertips. To your point, I no longer am afraid of not knowing things, because if I've got a digital device like my phone or an iPad or a computer, the internet, it used to be the joke, like in college, when I started college, you could not use the internet as a source. Right. And I'm in a project management certificate right now at Louisiana College, and literally all my sources come from the internet. It's funny, in 20 years, what was taboo is now tradition. And things have changed so much, and I think we're potentially better for it. I'll use the word potentially. We're potentially better for it. Obviously there's a potential spread of misinformation, right? For things not to be true. And I think that's where critical thinking comes in, because that could be true of you talking to anyone. You talk to someone in one city and they say this is the best city in the world. Talk to another person in another city, it's the best city in the world. They're like, okay, well, how do I figure out which one's best? How do I apply my knowledge to make a determination here?
That's right. Teaching people how to interpret the data is more important than the data. And it almost sounds counterintuitive to say that. But you can have information overload and not able to make a decision, or making wrong decisions because you don't know how to process it or filter through what's fact and what's not.
Yeah, and it's an exciting time, and a challenging time for educators, for technologists, those in that world, because I think we're in a critical moment where as a society, as a country, as a culture, we're now able to do so much more. That there's a much bigger, I think, vision for what our lives can do, but helping people to actually realize that and figure out what's good for them, not just what's a fad. I think that's the biggest thing that we have to watch out for with all this technology, with all this information. I'm a simple caveman. I love, if you go in my office, it'll look like I'm a production studio. So when I say I'm not into technology, it's gonna sound a little hypocritical, but what it is I still value technology as to what it can do to help me move my life forward. In and of itself, it's just metal and circuits and power.
That's right. There's got to be a real world or tangible benefit to it. And for example, in one of our classes, we were able to connect students in Lafayette, Louisiana, with students at a high school in China, and they were able to talk about the impacts of COVID-19 on both. Here you have students that have never met before, probably will never meet again in their lifetime, but are able to talk about the similarities and differences in their experience. That's something that adds value and meaning versus just a waste of time or trying to, as we talked about earlier, put on a face of how your life is, but to really no benefit.
Yeah, and it really does connect people, and I think that is one of the things, being able to talk to my mom in a moment's notice. I can FaceTime with her. I can talk to peers who are in Germany and England, which, in my industry, I have friends who are literally around the world. And that connectedness, which I think is so exciting. Those are, I think of like telegrams, right? Where, people are sending telegrams to each other. And that was like the way to move information, old school texting. You don't want to talk about old school texting. Let's they talk about, oh yeah, remember those flip phones? No. Little button go, right? That kind of stuff. But now we can do it instantaneously, and I think that's what's really exciting about the modern classroom.
It really is.
We can learn about culture by actually interacting with other culture, and that's really cool. Well, let's talk about politics here. Usually that's a taboo thing, religion and politics. But in your case, you have the rare privilege of being on a council seat that's really newly created. The dynamic here is a relatively recent occurrence. So tell us a little bit about what you get to do in that role.
Okay, so I serve as the Lafayette Parish Councilman for District 3. And you're right, so in Lafayette Parish, so we have parishes instead of counties, but they're the same thing. We have a consolidated form of government. So there's one person who acts as the executive for both the city as mayor and for the entire parish as parish president. And prior to my being on the council, we had one council that represented both the city of Lafayette and the parish of Lafayette. And there were some questions of the fairness of representation. And so about 2 years ago, voters approved the splitting of just that council with one executive, but almost two separate legislative branches, but still a consolidated government. So the people that will come out and build your roads and fill potholes or work on drainage or budget, finance, IT, all still one department that serve both the city of Lafayette and the parish. So it's been, to say the least, an interesting year and a half figuring out how that's supposed to work.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of controversy, but Lafayette I don't think is new to that. For those who are not who are watching this and who have no idea what we're talking about, Lafayette is in South Central Louisiana. When I tell my friends where I live, I tell them I live in South Central LA, which makes me sound like super like cool. Like, oh, like, you're like in Hollywood. I'm like, no, South Central Louisiana. We actually had a company call us from Los Angeles because they just looked us up and were like, yeah, you're in LA. And I'm like, no, wrong LA.
L period, A period.
It's a different one.
LA period.
Really happened. But I remember when we got LUS fiber to really challenge the existing internet service providers. And I think that decision was controversial. There was a lot of folks who had strong opinions and feelings about that, of which I respect both sides and both perspectives. And I think this is another bold initiative that Lafayette is taking on to do. And I think that's what makes our city so great. It really, we have deep and steeped in Cajun culture. Of course, we love good food. Per capita, I think we've got more restaurants than any other city in the at least the state, maybe the world, I don't know. But all of this sort of melting pot here, because again, for those who don't know, I-10 sort of runs across the state, really across the south, and it really divides sort of north Louisiana from South Louisiana.
Otherwise known as South Arkansas.
Right, South Arkansas, because it really does, like, there's a bit of a twang. People have a little bit of a country accent. We get a little farther up past that.
Completely different.
It really is different. And then, man, you come here from Ville Platte, come down I-10, everything's in the downbeat, right? So there's a different culture here, but we're also very modern. Right, so we're very progressive in our culture and the things that we have as a city. So I think this is an example of just one of those things that makes us really awesome as a community.
It really does. You mentioned the innovation that we've had, and Lafayette is different than almost any other city that I know of in the South. You and I both had the chance to travel extensively, and there are a lot of places that I love to visit.
Yeah.
Great places. But I love living in Lafayette. The culture's unique. It's different. And LUS Fiber is a perfect example of that. You're right. There was a lot of controversy of a government starting a utility company. And in some aspects, I agree with that. I don't think government should be in business. On the flip side, it really has, LUS Fiber has forced AT&T and Cox and other internet service providers to bring down their prices. I remember early on when LUS Fiber was a quarter of the price of what Cox and AT&T, some of these other internet service providers were.
Yeah.
And so that has made high-speed internet far more affordable, because now they're all competing at a very close rate.
And citizens benefit from that.
They do. They benefit. And then as a benefit, we've seen all these high-tech companies, CGI, Schoolmint, Viemed, LHC Group, all these national companies and international companies headquarter their offices here because they realize, wait, I can live in Lafayette and have a 15-20 minute commute, or I can live in Houston or Dallas or Atlanta or LA and spend 3 hours getting to and from work every day. But you have access to the same high-tech industry here in Lafayette.
Yep.
You can have a far better quality of life, and I think that's going to continue to elevate Lafayette.
I 100% agree. I'm very much for Louisiana. Living in Broussard, I'm for businesses in Broussard. I'm for the community at large in Lafayette Parish and Lafayette City. I think these things are what are going to continue to draw people. Louisiana has long had a stigma that we're somehow slow or less or any of these things. And if you go out my door right now, I don't have horses, but my neighbor has horses in their backyard. And I love the fact that I've got birds chirping in my backyard, and it's beautiful, and it's to some level country. But at the same time, that just because I'm living in the country doesn't mean that I'm lesser or less intelligent. And I think a lot of people sort of, they think we ride alligators or something.
It's true. I remember when the movie The Waterboy came out, and I had cousins that lived in Georgia, and they said, is that really what it's like? And I'm like, no. But Louisiana does have its challenges. If you look at the state as a whole, there are many challenges that need to be addressed.
Sure.
But when you single out Lafayette, the city and the parish and the surrounding area, it really is a unique, I would say, gem in the state of Louisiana and throughout the entire Gulf South.
It is. I love living here. You know, part of this series is about promoting local businesses and talking to business leaders and helping people to see how many things are going on here, and the exciting opportunity I think that we have as a city, as a parish, to work together to continue to just make this place an attractive place to live, a satisfying place to live. I love being here. Again, you mentioned travel. I used to travel 45 weeks a year, but this is home because I can get things like crackling and boudin here. And I mean, you can get it other places. It's just not the same.
I wouldn't suggest it.
It's not healthy, and I'm not advocating for them, although it's like one of my, I love boudin and crackling. We can take anything that's healthy and turn it unhealthy, like fried broccoli and cauliflower. That's another episode, though. So just to kind of put a bow on this, because I know we've gone for a little bit of time, but if you were to speak to the residents of your district, and I would say just Lafayette large, what would you say one of the biggest challenges that you feel like the council and you are working on to try to overcome?
I mean, I would say, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, is that question of, is Lafayette, the city, better off apart and separate from the parish? And is the parish better off apart and separate from the city of Lafayette? Yeah. And I think there are pros and cons to both sides of the argument. I would say that we are stronger together. We can accomplish more. Does it make it more difficult because you have to build consensus and make decisions, not just one city and a parish, but you mentioned the city of Broussard and Youngsville and Carencro and Scott. These used to be rural areas, and now they're growing, they're coming into their own.
Yep.
And I think that provides some extra challenges, but it also brings in extra opportunity. And if we can stay united and figure out how to work together, I think we are better together than we are separate. Yeah. And that's what I would like to see us work towards.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about the political process. Everyone has a voice. That's partly why you're here, sharing just your views. I'd be interested for those to comment below. I mean, there are going to be strong opinions, so be kind, be thoughtful, but be kind.
Earlier, it's okay to disagree.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think disagreement is good, but we can still disagree and respect each other.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, right? That's so important that we do that. So I want to say thank you so much for being on this episode of What's Brewing. It's just been an absolute pleasure. I think we could probably talk a whole lot longer. Sure. We'll probably get you back on to talk more about food, because maybe less politics stuff and more about like best food here. But Josh, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your insight, opening up, sharing about your life, your career, and of course what you're doing for the council. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this is Christopher, another episode of What's Brewing. Man, it's just been fantastic doing these interviews. Don't forget to like, subscribe to stay up to date with all the content that we're putting up on social media. And we will see you in the next one.